Hello and welcome to the show. So I've had an Xbox One X for a few days and it is time to share my thoughts, share my opinions on the console. Now, one of the big selling points, of course, for it is that it can play games in 4K. Unfortunately for me, I don't have a 4K TV. Now, I hope to get one in the near future. It is certainly very nice to know that the console can. I have played Forza 7 at a preview event. I played that one in 4K. Looks absolutely fantastic, but it's not something that I can do, and it's not something that a large number of people will be able to do necessarily at home. Also, even if I could play the games in 4K, I don't have a capture device that can capture in 4K. The few that are out there at the moment are horrendously expensive. There is an Elgato coming soon that I have no doubt I will acquire, but that's not out yet, not out for a little while. So yeah, I wouldn't actually be able to record in 4K anyway. So yeah, it can do it, and it is very nice to know, and it does look very impressive when you do have the setup. That being said, there are still advantages to this console if you are playing on a lesser definition TV. If you like, I have a pretty decent TV in my office, but it is, by no means utterly amazing. And even so, games are bloody good looking. And while, Assassin's Creed Origins is a very, very good looking game to begin with, it does look absolutely fantastic on the One X. It does play very well. I've had no issues with janky frame rates or anything. It's played incredibly smoothly. Of course, the main place I'm going to be noticing details is when it comes to Forza 7, because, well, I play an awful lot of Forza games, so I'm not necessarily going to notice the little things that make a difference when it comes to Assassin's Creed, because it's first time playing the game. So, we did a little test here. This is on the One S, loading up a race at Road Atlanta, driving a Camaro, and notice the dashboard and notice the interior on these opening shots. When you are driving from a third-person camera, to try and save, I guess, computing power, Forza 7 doesn't load up the interior of the cars. When you go into the interior cameras, it's all there, but from exterior cameras, it doesn't load up. So the dials look a bit like stickers, and the dashboard and so on is kind of a rough blank box. Put it on the One X, exactly the same car, exactly the same track and everything, and we have a dashboard, and the dials actually work. I've seen it, while it's not so easy to see on the Camaro, on the MX-5 Super 20, I actually saw the dials working on the car from the third-person camera. Now, is that utterly life-shattering differences in terms of graphics? No, but it's these little details are, yeah, quite impressive. Now, the actual car models, the actual tracks, look just as good, but it's, you can see where there were kind of saving methods, if you like, and when it comes to the One X, you get all of these little details. As I said, they're going to make a huge amount of difference, not necessarily, but it is nice to have. It's nice to have these things. Unfortunately, it doesn't fix replay cameras, which is a little bit of a shame. They still have wonky interior views, but there we go. Another thing that I did notice, and I'm hoping it's going to come across when it comes to kind of rendering out this video and so on, is the rear view mirror. The rear view mirror, when I drive a lot in first person view, and the rear view mirror very, very important for seeing where cars are behind you and what cars are doing and so on. Looks, whether it's slightly higher resolution, whether it's slightly better frame rate, overall it looks a lot smoother watching the cars in the background. So again, same cars, same number of AIs, identical tracks, unfortunately slightly different lighting conditions, because I can't set those in Forza. It's just, yeah, when you're playing on the One X, which is what the first shot was from, this one here on the One S, cars just don't quite look as good. They kind of, it's like slightly unnatural. I say that's slightly unnatural. It just doesn't quite flow as nicely when you're watching them, especially when you're watching them. Keep an eye on, there's a muscle car that bounces its way across the curb over here. It's just something not quite as smooth about the way all of the actions take place. Again, it's only minor little details, but you put it all together and you get a much better looking game. Again, Forza runs smoothly on the One S, but it runs better on the One X. Now, another test that I wanted to do is loading times. You see, I could go and take pictures and zoom in massively on pictures to try and compare stuff, but the truth is, it's not really a helpful real-world test, if you like. BMW can take an i8 and they can get it to do 100 miles a gallon in a lab, but in reality it does 30 or 40. So I decided to set up the 1X is in the top left corner, the 1S in the bottom right. I had to load from the dashboard into Forza 7, load up a circuit, complete a lap, and then get back to the main menu. And that would be the test. You can see how immediately faster the 1X has loaded up. I'm going through to select a car, and the 1S still hasn't loaded. Now, I will be honest, in this particular test, I didn't do, well, kind of watching back, I realised I didn't actually do a very good job at navigating the menus for the 1X. It was a little bit hampered by my slight ineptitude, so it does lose ground here as I wasn't massively efficient. But that initial loading time, there was a very, very big difference. As we now go to load up the circuits, it's, yeah, the 1S clawed it back slightly through me being a little bit slow. Now, I'm not going to do any camera jumps and so on, just to prove that there is no fake, no trickery and whatnot with this. There is, of course, an amount of weighting that is going to be identical between the two systems. Things like this mini cutscene, if you like, before the start of the race. It's not going to make any difference being on the 1X. Likewise, the initial sort of logos, if you like, the Turn 10 Studios logo that will come up is still going to be a set video clip, if you like. By the time the race actually gets underway, it's about a 7.5 second lead for the 1X. I'm kind of surprised in some ways. I've often felt that the loading up of races playing the 1X compared to the 1S always felt a fair bit faster. I'm not sure in this particular instance it really made a huge amount of difference. That initial loading time was quite impressive, but elsewhere not so much. Now it comes down to me trying to get the cars around this particular circuit. Of course, there is potential for a small bit of time to be made up in terms of my actual driving. Again, not a robot, can't do it 100% consistency, but again, if it's coming down to just a matter of a few tenths difference between them, then, you know, down to inconsistencies with me being a human being, when it's still, you know, we're still talking about a decent amount of time between the pair of them, that'll still be evident as my Alfa Romeo on the 1X is coming across the finish line now. The 1S is still getting out of the final corner. During the race is not going to make a difference, and lap times were within a couple of tenths of one another. Kind of getting out of the race, there's all sorts of different things that the game has to load. It loads up little cutscenes, it loads up a little podium cutscene, various credit rewards, and so on. And this doesn't seem to make a huge difference in terms of actual time. I get back to the main menu with the 1X. Eventually, it'll get to that one. For the 1S, I did actually end up leveling up, so I had a couple more screens to go through, which gets slightly skewered a little bit more. So, yeah, there are certainly the initial load-up makes a big difference. Into some of the races makes a small difference. It wasn't quite as large a difference in terms of loading time as I was expecting or had perhaps felt. I wanted to do a slightly different test, again, to do with loading up the game. GTA 5, notoriously long in terms of loading time, but I was extra curious about this because, well, Forza 7 has a Xbox One X enhanced version. There's an update, 30 gigs of download for you to do, whereas GTA 5 doesn't. It's not got a specific update, and well, already it's, you know, loading quicker. It gets off the initial screen faster, goes through, you know, these various messages that are going to be a set length, if you like, before going into the well-known loading screen. And I was curious to see, yeah, whether this just significantly more powerful console would actually make a difference in terms of loading up GTA 5. And sure enough, it does. It really, really bloody does. Because the 1X is already in. It is already loaded. And Michael is just sat at the front of his house. And the 1S is still going. And still going. And still going. Eventually, it will get into the game. It is, yeah, quite a sizable time difference. We're talking about 20 seconds difference before it does eventually get Michael into his house. At some point, there we go. That's a big difference. Now, yeah, GTA 5 has got a long loading time that is very, very well known, but still is a, yeah, impressive amount of difference. There are some slight downsides to all of these things, and that game size, file size, is starting to get quite astronomical. I mean, GTA 5 being 60-odd gig was pretty crazy as far as download goes. Forza 7 is now up towards 90 for the 1X version. Gears of War 4 that I got sent, again, the 1X version of this was 103 gig. They are some real big downloads. Now, my internet is pretty good. Still took it a long time to get Gears of War 4 downloaded. And I think one of the potential problems we might see is if you live in a part of the world where you might not have access to really super fast internet, you can't afford it, or your area of a country just doesn't get it, the disc version of a game that you will buy will probably be the standard Xbox version. And if you go and put it into a 1X, it'll want to download that the 1X enhancements, if you like. And that's a fair enough way of doing things, but that download is going to be huge. That download is going to be... The download of Forza 7 was, I think, about 30 gig was the difference between... It might be a bit more than 30 gig, in fact, between the normal version and the 1X version. It's a really big download. That is a really big download. I don't know what the difference would be between the Gears of War 4 one, but as more power is exploited out of the 1X, these downloads are going to get massive. They're going to get huge, and that is going to take a toll on your internet, and that could take an awful long time. Now, of course, overall, you're hoping that in general internet speeds are getting better and whatnot, but still, that's a big download. Yeah, the games look great. Gears of War 4 does look very impressive in all of its shiny goodness, but yeah, that 103 gig download took me kind of on and off for about 2 days to get it done. So yeah, and that's me with relatively decent internet. That's yeah, that could well be quite a big problem for a little while. There are also a couple of other issues. The first, kind of a general Xbox issue, in that the console doesn't have a huge number of exclusives. While there are plenty of good games that you can play on Xbox in general, PS4 is winning in terms of the outright exclusives. Now, while maybe, kind of speculation-wise, maybe we will see more games, more developers and so on keen to work with Xbox now that there is just a lot more power, a lot more stuff that they can do with the console, and hell, maybe we'll see PC games that wouldn't have made a transition to console now be more keen to try, because there is something significantly more powerful to run them. Maybe we will see that in the future, but I don't know. Yeah, at the moment in terms of exclusives, Xbox is a little bit on the weak front. And in terms of games in general, I mean, this is a problem that PS4 Pro is going to suffer from as well. Games are still stuck being tethered to a base model console, if you like. There can be a huge amount of power available to us, but games are still being built to work on all of them. So the 1X enhanced versions are, well, just slightly better running versions rather than, entirely based upon a more powerful console. Essentially not fully exploiting the power that is available to them. How long it's going to be until that changes, how long it's going to be until we see games that only work on the 1X, that I do not know. But yeah, at the moment games are still kind of stuck tethered to older systems, which will limit the improvements you're going to get, certainly for a little while. In terms of money, is the console worth the money? I would say, yeah. It's £450. That's on Amazon without any games. There may well be deals around the place in various ways, but yeah, for 450 quid you get an awful lot of console. Now, there are going to be those that are shouting around saying that PC is better. And yeah, of course it is. My PC is way superior to the 1X. But my PC also cost considerably more money. Maybe for that 450 quid, if you knew what you were doing, you could build a computer to be as good as the 1X. But I bet said computer would need upgrading to keep up with modern games before the 1X would. So in terms of value for money, it is very good, but you will need various equipment to make the most of it. If you don't have a 4K TV at the moment, you're not really going to be making the most of all of that power. Now, I am planning on getting one in the near future myself, but not everybody necessarily will be. And again, that's more expense. So, yeah, in terms of making the most of the One X, it might not be for everybody, but it's nice to know that there is that power available to you. It's nice to know that that is going to be available when it comes, for me to be upgrading my stuff. And yeah, there are noticeable, while not major difference, there certainly are noticeable difference with the enhanced versions of the games that I've played, from little details, loading times, and all of that. I think at the end of the day, while yes, I did get sent a review unit for this, I was planning on buying a One X regardless, and had I spent my own money on this console, I wouldn't have been disappointed with it. I wouldn't have been disappointed with the improvements that I was seeing playing on my normal, my normal TV, the current stuff that I have, and certainly not knowing that I'm going to be upgrading the rest of things in the near future. So, yeah, overall it is a good console. It probably won't be for everybody. It probably won't be for everybody at all. And yeah, this is a fair amount of money to splash out on something that, if you're not planning on getting upgraded TVs, or you don't really care too much about all of the really fine little details, you might not notice a huge amount of difference. That's fair enough. But yeah, what is there is yeah, pretty damn impressive. I've been enjoying playing games, and there is even without having high-end TVs and so on, there is noticeable differences. I will be very curious to see where games go in terms of being designed sort of for the One X first. I'll be curious to see how long it takes before we start seeing those appear, and just quite what the console is going to be capable of in the near future, because, yeah, certainly at the moment, like with all new console launches, let's face it, perhaps not really quite the most being made out of it for now, but, yeah, value for money-wise, I think it is a hell of a machine. Just need the kind of games to go with it, and the TV would also help. But that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye. And if by chance you happen to be here looking for some cute cats during an Xbox video, well, said cats were on the rather sleepy at the point in which I was filming all this. However, of course, wouldn't possibly want to let any of you down, so Amara was taking a nap in my office while Cass had found himself a different place. Basically, cats were being cats. They like to sleep a lot. They like to sleep a lot and then cause chaos. They caused the chaos during the fort video. This video is the sleepy time for them.